All right, this next one is from Montoya, titled Star Citizen now has over 1,100 employees after Turbulent acquisition. Montoya is my go-to for business advice. So let's see what he has to say about this, because I wasn't surprised by this, and I don't think it really means anything, and maybe he has some more insight into it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Big news out of CIG this morning. It seems they have fully acquired the Montreal game dev Turbulent. I say game dev because Turbulent originally came on board to develop the website for Star Citizen, and as they become more and more involved in developing and working with CIG, they start taking on more tasks involving.
I mean, they're literally like making the game at this
persistent
point.
anti-streaming, and server meshing. So they're very much entrenched and integrated into what Star Citizen is already doing. We're going to take a look at this release in a second, but I want to jump back to a 2020 release when they announced a minority stake in Turbulent. So this has been a long time coming. And what I can only surmise from this move is that CIG has worked out that it's actually cheaper for them to simply buy out Turbulent completely than continue to pay them for services. I'm not sure what the rates are, but if they have X amount of hours, they need 1,000 dev hours to create a new settlement. And they're saying, well, instead of just paying them for that, why don't we just buy them out? Because in the long term, 5-10 years down the line, when the game comes out, it's actually going to be cheaper for us to actually own Turbulent outright than continue to contract out to them. So along with a minority stake back in 2019, comments from the CTO, co-founder of Turbulent, where I'm extremely proud to officially announce the creation of Star Citizen development team in Montreal, Turbulent. Now, Montreal has a rich history of game dev. Ubisoft being out of Montreal. As he mentions right here, Montreal is an amazing
Are there any other big studios in Montreal? Like, Montreal's always been Ubisoft.
Pool of developers and rich video game history. So no doubt that any game devs that might be working for Ubisoft and looking to leave or other opportunities could end up and do end up
BioWare,
at Turbulent and at CIG,
Bethesda.
which is beneficial to CIG, obviously.
All right. So yeah, it is really a hotbed. But everyone goes Ubisoft, but it's clearly more than just that. Okay.
So this move is, I guess, well, it's surprising. I didn't know that CIG was looking to add more to their team. And with the joining of Turbulent now, they have over 1,100 employees working there. So CIG, a large company, well, they already were large, but larger, 1,100 employees plus at this point. Let's take a look at what they're saying in the release here. Hi, everyone. We have some exciting news to share with you all. After more than a decade of fruitful partnership and years working together in the trenches to build something in the industry we've never seen before, we decided that it was time for us to finally and officially join forces. Again, this is 100% a financial issue. It's more financially beneficial to CIG to simply own them outright than continue to contract out to them.
It probably does make sense, and it's probably better in the long term. But even I get like the ick of them spending our money on purchasing like another studio. I don't know.
There are no figures here for what the actual buyout amount was, but
it's not my money, so I stopped spending a long time ago.
Line, it's actually cheaper to buy them out right now than to contract out for another 10 years. That's the math behind it. So obviously very well done to Turbulent. I'm sure they're celebrating and popping some champagne right now about it. But obviously also an expensive move for CIG.
Yeah.
No doubt we'll see some ship sales coming along soon to make up for it.
So
we first met Turbulent.
Even Montoya seems to kind of agree about that too. Is like they're going to have to... and you know what? Those ship sales will likely only be pictures, right? Instead of actually finished products.
CTO and CEO back in November 2012, when they just launched our crowdfunding campaign and not want to be holding to Kickstarter, they built their own website. So Turbulent came along as the web developer. But as I mentioned in the beginning of this video here, they became a core part of the efforts: cloud services, persistent anti-streaming, and server meshing. So as CIG developed and grew, Turbulent came along and said, we can do this for you. We can hire some devs to work on server meshing and contract out to you. And CIG liked that. I guess the US dollar and Canadian dollar exchange being favorable for that also. It's much cheaper.
But I mean, see, Montoya's looking at it from the business standpoint, but let's not forget that people in the UK, people in Austin, people in California, I think we're all working on iCache and these other things that, guess what, didn't work. And then Montreal studio comes in and goes and just made it work. So there has to be some value there in whatever talent Benoit has or can do or whatever. But they did something that they've been trying to do or said they were going to do for a really long time and never did. Right? So that's kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. And I think that that's kind of one of the reasons why they might want a little bit more of Turbulence time or dedication is, they can't not work on CIG products now because they are CIG. So I think that's also part of it is, yes, from financial reasons, it might make sense, but I think it also is from priorities of getting shit done.
To hire devs in Canada who will work for cheaper, well, relatively.
That being said, I can feel the YouTube comments going, well, PES doesn't work and blah, 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 blah. It's not blah, 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 blah. Those things are actually kind of true in a way. Like, we haven't seen the full breadth of what it's supposed to be yet. So for me, I don't know what other people think. PES is not done yet. It's not finished. It's not ready. It's not functioning fully. So we still have a ways to go, and we'll see what they do. We'll let them cook maybe a little bit longer,
in LA
but not
or
much.
in Texas. So that's why Turbulent grew, and I guess why it got to the point where it did now. With Turbulent as part of CIG core group of companies, where headcount will be over 1,100, making us one of the largest independent game developers
just phase one of
in
PES?
the world.
Okay, well, when is phase one even over yet, and when are they going to do phase two? I don't care about how many phases. Just do it.
World. Yeah, we're going to read more about this. Let's go on to Reddit and see some of the comments over there first. But before I do, just a reminder of what Turbulent did do. Well, aside from the RSI website, the star map is something they worked also on. And I guess for a lot of you who may be new to Star Citizen, have never seen this before, one day we will get to use this for its purpose. At the moment, I know it's just that for eye candy, but it's very cool. It got a lot of awards, actually. It shows you the small jump tunnels, the medium, the larges. You get to look around, you get to see what the space looks like. I don't think this is going to be what the final actual star map is going to be, but it gives you an idea of the scope of where they hope to take Star Citizen eventually. Obviously, we don't have any of these star systems in here. Well, we do have one of them. But this is what they hope to get to eventually. And Turbulent, being one of the companies working on outposts and a lot of these planet techs, I guess this is why they came on board. So let's see what Reddit has to say about it. And I guess this is a good comment here from Aces High. Everyone thinks this is going to speed up the dev development, but I have no idea what happens when you grow like that. If anything, it'll be a reason for slow releases. Absolutely,
getting
yes
everybody up
and
to
no.
speed,
But
right?
look, here's the story. If you're baking a cake, you have one chef to bake a cake, and you say, well, I'm going to bring in 10 chefs now. Will that cake bake any faster? The answer is no. So adding more people, throwing more people onto it.
The cake doesn't bake faster, but if the cake has multiple layers or something like that, or there's multiple jobs, you can then make more cakes because, one, you don't have to put the icing on the cake. You don't have to put the sprinkles on the cake. You don't have to pick the cake up and put it somewhere else, right? So if you don't have to prep for the cake, right? You have somebody prep, you have somebody do this, and then if everybody does those things, there's more cakes that eventually end up being made, right? That's why there's prep cooks. That's why there's sous chefs. That's why there's the chef, right? I don't think, in a kitchen, there's not only one person cooking. That's why there's multiple people cooking.
issue onto a project, onto a problem, doesn't necessarily speed it up. Now, will there be different kinds of cakes? Will there be an improvement to baking the cakes? Maybe, but adding more people doesn't mean things will speed up. And because
it does in some aspects of the game. So making an entirely different or another studio that makes ships. Well, now in the monthly report, we're going to see the EU ship team is making this ship. The NA ship team is making, well, no, the US ship team is making this ship. The Montreal ship team is making these ship, these, this, whatever. And then you'll see what that will speed things up. So I don't know why we would have slower speed. I think what they mean in the short term of catching everybody up and them learning the processes. And for me, what I hope Montreal does is break those processes down and change them, hopefully. But yeah,
post CIG, well, here you go. CIG owned 30% already. This doesn't mean 10%. That adding more people is going to make things faster, but it definitely does add more talent onto the team. So don't expect things to speed up because of this. CIG had access to everyone there already. All this does essentially is cost savings in the future. Instead of having to contract out to Turbulent.
Okay, I think I understand. Is that everybody that's currently there, they already had access to, but the difference now is but they're hiring there. So I think things will speed up over time, but only because the studio still hasn't hired everybody. The ship team's being made. This team is being made, right? So I think we'll see things speed up, but maybe not because of the acquisition, or maybe they started hiring because they knew this acquisition was happening.
For the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they simply straight up own Turbulent now, and Turbulent is part of CIG, which will have cost savings in the future. Not this year, but down the line, that's where they see it going. And obviously, having access to Canadian devs at a cheaper rate compared to US devs is definitely more beneficial in the long run for them too. Here's an interesting comment from Casey saying, next year we'll have so many versions of we have to harmonize our workflows and procedures as an excuse why things are slowed down. I don't believe.
Right, like so many of CIG devs in the UK and in Austin in the US. This seems like it's their only game company that they've ever worked for, or they were like in a limited in like QA at another company. Like there's a lot of people that went from TT Games in QA to the Manchester studio, stuff like that. But not many people at that company feels like they've like shipped games, right? So when you got Turbulent people, they all shipped games.
This is to be the case. I think Turbulent is
when they
already
came in, they just
as much integrated into CIG as they could be from 2020 already. I don't think there's much they need to do to make it mesh any more than it is. And non-Nimbus here, I think, calling it correctly, saying they've been working with Turbulent since the very beginning. If they still need to align that much again to be a sign of bad management, absolutely. I think Turbulent has pretty much been doing 90%, maybe even 99% of what they do already focused just on CIG. So it's not that they need to focus on meshing the two cultures together. I believe it's pretty much meshed as much as they can be already. Yes.
When it comes to game dev, probably.
What? Yeah, look, I guess not many people know this exists. When this first came out, it blew our minds at how big the scope of what's going to be happening is. Obviously, nowhere close to where it is, but it gives you a
of what's going to be happening. This is not happening. I don't see this happening.
Clue as to how CIG is thinking it's all going to work out. I also don't see this map being something which they would put out ahead of the game, the actual map, because you're not supposed to know where the systems are. It's supposed to be an adventure in finding all these systems. So we'll see how that goes.
That's not true
But in any case, the Star map actually did win many awards back in the day.
There are some unknown star systems that aren't listed here that you can find, and that there's an adventure. But these are all known. These are all charted as far as the UEE star charts and things like that. So that's not true.
I know now, all these years later, it's not that impressive, but when it did come out, it was extremely impressive. And yes, it did win several awards. Dexy saying, surely with over 1,100 people, we can get Theaters of War back on the shelf, right? As far as I understand, the stuttering issues and the problems they found with Theaters of War is not something that putting more people on the problem can fix. Whether they get 1,000 people, 2,000 people, again, the cake baking theory, right? If you bring in more chefs, can you make the cake bake faster?
I mean, we just keep bringing in more chefs for this game, and nothing's happening either.
No.
So,
but Siege of Arisen was a step closer. Arena Commander, Combined Arms Act, tank battles. There are similar things coming. The lessons learned from Theaters of War, and I don't have the exact answer of why they can't make it work, but whatever the reasons are, they're taking smaller steps to getting there. So Siege of Arisen being one, and the changes we saw coming up with the Combined Arms and the tank battles,
sharp.
They're taking baby steps to getting to where Theaters of War would have been. So I think Theaters of War was overly ambitious. They hit problems which they simply couldn't solve, that you take a step back and baby step their way up to that. That's what I saw happening over there.
I don't agree. I think they didn't want to solve them. I think that they changed priorities. It's not that they couldn't, it's that it would have taken too much time, or they maybe needed to wait for Planet Tech stuff to improve or whatever, where the Theaters of War people couldn't solve. But we got that stuff, and then the game was so outdated, or they left Star Marine, Arena Commander, Theaters of War to die for so long that they're doing those updates to bring them back up to speed. And then whatever dev Theaters of War might need to finish it off, they'll probably deliver it, and it probably won't be that fun. I don't know. We'll see. The amount of weight people put on Theaters of War, how I saw Theaters of War was, man, there is a very long time before, from 2019 or 2020 when they talked about, I think it's 2019, from 2019 to like now, I kind of expected it to be a bit of a long process, or maybe a year before we ended up having server meshing based on the communication that they had. I just looked at Theaters of War as a fun distraction from the PU while we were waiting for new planets, server meshing tech, things like that. And we're still waiting. So I'm not putting that much energy into Theaters of War, Arena Commander, or anything like that, because they're not standalone games yet, and may never be.
Interesting comment from Kauto,
right,
saying the expansion of the body count at CIG concerns me. More bodies to receive a salary, faster spending of money. I'm afraid they're going to grow too big too fast and spend too much too fast and run out of money.
Yeah,
look, that has been an ongoing concern of mine for the last 8 years already. And every year, and I keep showing you in the videos I make talking about their finances, I'm proved wrong. So if they keep on growing like they do, they keep on bringing them.
Like Montoya's videos around their funding, next year, whenever we see what this kind of year had, I think is going to be really interesting, because they are down a bit, but they're up a bit in expenses significantly, right?
Like they do, then they can't afford this. But also, I would like to believe that there are financial advisors at CIG who looked at this work with Turbulent and said, we need Turbulent to work with us for the next 5 or 10 years. And considering what we're paying them now, it is actually beneficial to buy them out right now rather than wait 5-10 years down the line. So I believe CIG has this right. But the question always is, can they support the new employees coming in? Can they keep feeding the mouths? Can they keep paying the salaries? And I've been saying the same thing for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and they keep on doing it. So
far, it's been okay.
So we'll see how this...
But, just because so far it's been okay doesn't mean that it can't come falling down really quick. And I don't know. I would be really curious if Montoya had any concerns about this year and the way things have been going and what he thinks and stuff like that, and what some other people think, because I'm getting nervous.
Year goes, I do believe there's going to be some big announcements at CitizenCon, maybe not Squadron 42, but definitely some big ships being released. And if those big ships bring in the money like they did at the previous Kraken sale, the last CitizenCon I went to, then yeah, look, they're bringing it in. they keep doing it. So if they can keep on bringing the money, then they should expand. And I
But
guess
they can't keep
we'll
selling
get
big ships
worried
because they don't finish them. They don't make them.
when we start seeing year after year of declining revenues. If we see
Year after year, he says.
decline in revenues and sales and disinterest in Star Citizen, which we have not seen because interest has only been growing, and keeping in mind that we'll also start seeing people from Starfield, once Starfield comes out this year, and we see a whole new generation of individuals interested in the Star Citizen type genre, we may see a big influx of players from Starfield to Star Citizen in the coming years,
Maybe.
which will only mean more sales, more ships being sold, and more funding. So that concern, definitely one I've had for years, and you know what? They keep on bringing more money. But in any case, that is the news. So let me know what you think about this Turbulent acquisition. Was it the right move? Give me your thoughts, and if I missed anything important, post below. If you like my content, as always, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, you meatbag. I'll catch you in the next one.
Okay, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm worried about the next year or so. I think he's right. We've always been concerned, is this thing going to stay afloat? Is it going to stay afloat? And then they just do record funding. Well, they're not going to do record funding for the first time, and they're well, at least it doesn't look like they're going to. And I don't see them stopping on, they're still hiring. This whole Montreal studio, yeah, they have 1,100 devs right now. What are they going to have? And then they're still hiring in the UK. And it's what is happening, dude? How are they going to keep up with this? This is the first time I've been genuinely worried in the last little while, because before it was always no matter how dumb they are, it doesn't matter because they keep selling spaceships and it's working out for them. This is the first year it didn't work out as intended because the game sucked. Right? The game was so bad, so unplayable, literally couldn't log in unplayable, that people didn't back the game in the way that they expected it to. And what sort of impact will that have long term, or I guess not long term, in the short term on this whole thing? And I don't know. I'm getting increasingly worried. This was more expected, the Turbulent acquisition, than anything. It's not really about that. It's more about how are they going to keep this going without negatively affecting the game's development or the game's gameplay more than they already have.